Hello, my loves. Hello, hello, hello. My name is Destina. This is Spiritually Bougie Astrology, and we are talking about the astrological transits for April 3rd to April 9th. We are in a new month. We are coming off of a very interesting month of revelation and having things come to the surface and getting new understandings and new ideas and new ways of doing things, getting new initiatives and programs of some sort started. Many of us are actually taking on new ways of doing things, new projects, so much newness all in the month of March. And then we got to the very, very last week where we started to hit a bit of a milestone. Now, this milestone was a bit of just what was going on in the present. This is also a milestone in regards to where we start to transition in the eclipse cycle. Now, I'm not just talking about the moon cycle from Aries new moon to Aries new moon. I'm actually talking about the 18-month cycle that started in January of 2022 when the nodes changed signs and actually entered Taurus and Scorpio. We've hit a milestone where we're going to start to get new information this next week. We're going to start getting new ways of doing things, new emphasis and new ideas. And we have so much balancing in the works now from that milestone, from reaching that certain point in our life's journey, in our spiritual journey, in the eclipse axis journey, that now we're looking at what needs to come through that starts to give us a little bit of clarity in regards to areas of fog that have been going on since last year. Now, there's been a lot that's gone on since last year. There's been so much that has gone on since last year, but it's true. We're getting into a whole new part of the journey. And this week in particular, compared to anything that has occurred since the start of Aries season, and that will go through into the start of eclipse season, that this week is the most Venusian and almost the most romantic. Now, one of the transits that occurred in the very last part of March, specifically March 30th, was the Venus-Uranus conjunction. And if you listened to the forecast of last week, of that week, I said that there are things that are going to start to build and come through from that conjunction that will lead to the Libra full moon that's occurring this week. Now, the Libra full moon is going to be exact on April 5th, which is a Wednesday. However, we're building up to that from certain energies, from certain areas where we were inspired, where we had certain things kind of fall into place, where certain things came together, where certain things were revealed. And this time that revelation was in an area of the sky that had already been highlighted before in many, many, many transits. And even one step further is going to allow for certain things to finally start to take shape. Pivotal disruption, necessary timing. We've had so many karmic lessons that came through during the last eclipse season, through the Mars retrograde, and now we're coming into something very, very new in the month of April. We have a lot of action that is going to start to take shape, and most of this action is taking us forward. We have very little opposition in the energies as they are playing out, and I say very little because nothing's perfect. I'm not the kind of person that's going to promise you sunshine and rainbows just to give you Skittles. Nothing is perfect, but we're moving towards something that in some ways is going to be very critical. In other ways is going to allow for a lot of emotional expansion in the next week. So let's get into the days. Share my screen and a window, ephemeris. Voila. All right. Monday, the March, the 3rd, Monday, the March, not even the March. I'm so sorry. The April. Monday, April 3rd. I make fun of myself. I mix stuff up all the time. Anyways, Monday, April 3rd, we will start the day with the moon in Virgo. The moon will be in Virgo all of this day. But while the moon is going through Virgo, there's another thing that's occurring, and that is Mercury is ending its run through Aries and transitioning into Taurus. And this feels like part of the weekend of where we were being very critical of trying to get something done. Certain reality set in where we had certain excitements, now seeing the action that needs to be involved and seeing what all is necessary to make certain things happen. We kind of carried some of that energy into Monday, where we haven't finished everything from the weekend or the week before, and we're carrying some of that over. I'm not just talking about like work stuff. I'm actually talking more on the personal stuff. Unless, you don't work a normal 9 to 5, then it could very well be the work stuff. But it feels like we're trying to finally get something lined out. It gets lined out while Mercury is leaving the sign of Aries and Mercury goes into Taurus. The thing about whenever Mercury immediately goes into Taurus is that it's immediately squaring Pluto. Pluto is at 0 degrees of Aquarius. We have that right here. Here's Mercury having just made its little dip into Taurus. It's at 0, 0. And for a lot of us, this is going to be like, we've done a bunch of work to try to get something going. And then we were trying to like meet a deadline because somebody was coming over. Somebody was coming through. Somebody was meant to see the transformation and the work of everything that has been involved. If we're doing certain projects, if we're doing renovations, those levels of construction, if that's that level of change, Mercury coming around the corner is just like, okay, we had to get all of this ready so this house can be shown. Going into the real estate game for just a second. Others are going to be like, I've done all this work. I finally got things squared away. I'm going to go do something. Go to the store, go somewhere, do something. And when we're rounding the corner, we see somebody. We see something. And it's going to be very sudden. It's going to be very unexpected, but it's going to be very, very necessary for how the rest of this week plays out. There is an area of change that needs to be discussed, that needs to be reviewed, that needs to be understood. There are certain aspects of our work and everything that we've been working on in the last few weeks that now are going to bring us to new levels of stability. We don't necessarily have all of those, pieces into place, but we've got most of it. We've got a good idea. We've moved into a location, but not all the boxes are unpacked. We still have no idea where the toilet paper is in some way. Like, we've got certain things lined out and now we're trying to get them into another, and it immediately has an interaction. Whether that is somebody coming to your house, you going out, like I said, or whenever you're trying to go to your next work meeting and then all of a sudden, like, the person that's in the meeting is not who you expected. It's very likely it's somebody you have some level of a past with, or that person has such a reputation that it's almost startling whenever you saw them, like, oh, I've heard about you. I don't want to do this meeting now. We've all been in this state. We've all been in that moment where we have to go into that meeting or go do that one thing that we don't necessarily want to do. But once we do it, we realize the rest of the information involved. We realize that there's more to it. And why do I say that? Because the moon is in Virgo. Mercury rules Virgo. And shortly after Mercury enters Taurus, the moon is going to enter a trine to Uranus. And there is understanding in the new conversation. There is an idea. There is something that comes through that can be very, very exhilarating. We are excited to talk about it. We are excited to be a part of it. It's not necessarily at all what we were expecting. And we need to have an open mind so that way we can understand how this feeds into that new area of stability. Now that Mercury has entered Taurus, a stable, fixed earth sign. This is why I'm saying new areas of stability. Okay. Now, there is benefit. There is understanding. There is an idea that this one event, as reckless as it is, as abrupt as it is, as crazy as it has turned into, can benefit in more than one way. Now, what's going to happen overnight, what's going to happen later in the evening, is that the moon is also going to enter a trine with Venus. There she is. Venus. So again, the benefit, the understanding, the novelty of how this new way of doing things, or this project that we've just invested all this time in, or this process that we've been dealing with and trying to get to put into play, we see the benefit as the day continues, as that conversations continue, as the trial and error workaround of launching this new thing continues. So the energy of Monday is actually really, really good. There can be some suddenness that can be very, very triggering for some people, depending on where this is landing at in your chart and what your personal karma is. But for many of us, it's going to be very beneficial. It's going to be helpful in a lot of ways. And the thing is, a lot of what kind of follows this week follows Mercury in a lot of ways. Mercury in Venus' sign. Okay. Now, overnight on the 4th, overnight on the 3rd, going into the 4th. I just want to say the 4th all the time. I'm a Jeeper, so I have to say this is 4x4 day. So if you have a 4-wheel drive, or you're an off-roader or anything like that, there you go. It's 4-wheel drive day. That's what April 4th is. So that's my little made-up holiday little thing. Overnight, going into the next day, there's going to be some areas that kind of carry over from Monday, that as we've had different understandings, or as we've overthought from the excitement, some of us overthink, we kind of get met with confusion that next morning. The moon is going to make an opposition to Neptune. We've got that right here. Here's Neptune. Here's the moon. Here we go. And it's quick. It's not horrible, considering that this confusion is going on as Mercury is still in that square to Pluto, even though Mercury is separating. Mercury is also entering within that 3-degree conjunction to the North Node. So there's very specific ideas, communication, and conversation that are being had this week that really kind of start as we get into Tuesday. So again, the moon is still in Mercury's sign. We're meeting a bit of confusion. We're being met with confusion. We need to enlighten certain people, get them reaffiliated with the ideas, get them kind of trained, let them know some things. There are going to be questions that need to be answered. There's information that needs to be shared. It might not be in that same area for every single person. What could have been triggering for one person could be the next morning getting info or getting the input of another that has no idea what happened the day before. None at all. But we still need a way to break through that fog. And we still need a way to get new understandings. And that really kind of goes into how Tuesday starts. Now, as it continues, later in the day, the moon is going to go into Libra. So I'm going to bump this by hour, and I'm warning you now, it's going to change the wheel. But I like showing it by hour. So late afternoon, basically I think about for Central Time, it's between 4:30 and 5:30. Just rounding my stuff out, somewhere closer to 5. The moon goes into Libra. The moon goes into the sign that we're going to have the full moon. The moon is going into Venus's sign. And Venus, the host now, is in her own home sign, is in the sign of Taurus. I want to make this very clear, because as we get through the rest of Tuesday, I wouldn't blink for a second. I was like, wait, 4x4. Tuesday, sorry. I just want to say 4x4 again. Obviously, I want to go off-roading right now. One of my Jeeper friends is going to see this and message me like, when are we going? Like, you just ride with me. I'm so sorry. As we get into the later part of the day, we start to feel those Venusian energies, and we start to feel areas starting to balance themselves out, even though nothing has quite happened yet. Keyword here is yet. Yet. I like Tuesday evening as a whole. Like I like it for a lot of people. I like it in a lot of different ways. But I also realize that as things have kind of fell into place, and as we are starting to see parts of our milestone literally reaching where it needs to be at this time, another energy will start to come through. A shift in the energy, and that starts overnight from the 4th into the 5th. So this is going to be a night that it's not necessarily about dreams. It's more our minds are going to be very active and very, very busy. We're going to be wanting certain things. We're going to be thinking about certain things. We're excited about a lot of things, and we have something kind of rolling through. Now, for my medical staff people, the people that are in nursing, the ones that are EMTs, if you work in a nursing home, if you have to do anything in regards to health, I want y'all to be very, very aware of Tuesday night into Wednesday and Wednesday night into Thursday. Because even though the full moon is specifically on Wednesday evening, there is this overnight energy that kind of creates a click. So I'm going to move the wheel again, and I'm moving it by hour. There's everybody's like heads up. But there's a reason why. So let me bump this until we get the moon about 5 degrees. There we go. 3:26 a.m. my time. So again, if you're on the medical staff, if you work in service in any way where you have to do stuff overnight, if you do something overnight, gas station attendants, if you do like late night stuff with bars and stuff like that, anything that keeps you out after hours, understand that emotions can start to reach a high overnight, Tuesday into Wednesday. And it's going to lead to a click in certain parts of the energy. It's going to lead to a lot of tension, a lot of frustrations, a lot of misunderstandings. Somebody thinks something's going a certain way, and all of a sudden we start to feel the click. We start to feel that shift in the energy. And the shift in the energy is coming from Mars squaring the moon. Somebody's going to say something. They're going to mean what they say emotionally. They're going to mean exactly what they say, but it's going to lead to other events. So this can be an overnight energy that leads to some levels of aggression and misunderstanding. And I need people that are going to be doing that overnight stuff to be very, very aware of that. If you work in the medical profession, again, be very aware of this energy. For the rest of us that sleep at night on occasion, I don't know, I have insomnia. I don't always sleep well at night. We're going to wake up to a shift in that energy, a shift in our own energy. Some of us are going to be very irritable and have no idea why. Some of us are going to feel very determined to have something come about, or we start to just overthink in a lot of ways about a very specific energy or a specific person or a specific event. This is what I mean by part of this week. It's going to be very different from the previous weeks where everything was feeding into one another. We get into parts of this week and we kind of feel that sideline. We feel where that milestone was. And right here, we're feeling a bit of a sideline. So what starts to come through? What is coming through this week is meant to give us an idea and a preface of things that are going to come later this year. And also other things that need to be handled and need to be addressed and need to be understood, that kind of closes out some areas that have been lingering since previous eclipses, all the way to last year. Okay. We're going to feel the frustration. We're going to feel the disruption. We're going to feel the intensity. Some of us are just going to have the desire to go do something. We're going to wake up highly motivated to get something accomplished, get something done. That's more positive ways. The other ways that we're going to be looking at it is sometimes we're going to just be angry to be angry, even though it's not an anger per se energy, but the frustration of anything that hasn't gone a certain way, we will feel it a lot more this day. But this, for most of us, doesn't necessarily feel like it's tied to a lot of what's been going on in the other areas. Now, that's kind of the start. We'll have the ability to settle things down. As the moon gets further from Mars, we'll get more things lined out. We'll kind of fall more into our normal Venusian. I like balance. I like pretty things and sparkly things. I'm a Libra person, whatever you are. You Libra people, you know what I mean by you either like animal prints or sparkly things. It is what it is. Things will kind of continue to finally move forward. And the frustration from the earlier part of the day will start to kind of move away, which is good. Now, we're going to bump this until we get to the earlier part of the afternoon, well, the earlier part of the evening, and then I'm going to leave it alone for a minute. Now, the other thing that's occurring this day is we need to address certain wounds. We need to infer and ask questions about the wellness of a situation, the health of a situation. We need to see how deep certain past wounds are, and if there is the ability to stitch them up, to heal them, to address them. And this feeds into part of the full moon, but this is not about the full moon. It's actually about the energy that starts before the full moon that we're kind of going through all day. And it's the sun conjunction to Chiron. Now it actually goes exact after around 5 p.m. my time. This is between 5 p.m. and 5:30 right here. And the sun's just past Chiron. So it hasn't been very long. Chiron is the wounded healer. In mythology, half god, half centaur, I totally just went blank. And he will go from battle to battle healing. The reason he does so well in this practice of medicine is because he can go through battle to battle, not having to be subject to the wounds of man. Being part God, he is not wounded by the weapons of man. He specifically needs the weapons of a god. Well, in one particular battle, on the other side was Mars or Aries, depending on which mythology you follow. And weapons are unleashed. Chiron is injured. Chiron loses an eye. And he cannot heal himself. And he has to continue his life having a wound he can never heal, but still healing others. If that's not the full-on depiction of the idea of understanding trauma and trauma bonds and how we go through them, there is a recognition of wounds that needs to be understood when the sun makes its conjunction to Chiron. And when I was meditating on this earlier, what came to me was a previous transit. And I'm infamous for tying something back to a previous timeline. And I'm sorry for anyone that bothers. But a lot of times it kind of makes connections that people hadn't put together yet. They didn't realize the astrology would bring something back full force. It was at roughly this area, this 14, 15 degree mark. This is at 15. The other one was at 14. It's at this mark that last June, we had the Mars-Chiron conjunction. Now, Mars is not touching this. I can't explain exactly why I went back to that one, but that's what came through to me, was that some of the energy that's going to start to be healed, that's going to start to be given areas of clarity, that's going to get different understandings, are not new wounds. They are old wounds. And now we need to go and address them. We need to process them. There needs to be discovery. There needs to be something talked about. Not everybody's going to rush to talk about their trauma. Not everybody's ready to do that. Some people are going to kind of skate around it and be like, so do you remember when I did that thing last year and I was an idiot? I was stupid. I shouldn't have done those things. How bad did I mess up? Can I call that person? Would an apology help? Am I wasting my time? There's going to be some of that. We're going to experience some of that in some ways this week. It's not necessarily specifically this day. The human effect is that sometimes energy plays out a day before or a day or two after. So just understand that this is the day that it's exact, but we're kind of in this energy in the next, over just this week. Just round it out. So we're seeing an area that needs healing. We're talking about our past wounds. We're shedding light on certain areas. That way, if it's not instigating our own healing, it's allowing someone else to heal by understanding the wounds of another. And we all kind of do that whenever we go through our process. There are so many of us that we think that nobody's ever experienced the level of pain or trauma or anything like that, that nobody's ever experienced that same level of trauma that I have. And a lot of times, that's not the case. There is some recollection, some information, some level of experience that is similar to your own that is carried by others. Just because you don't know who they are doesn't mean it doesn't exist. This can be a lot of that type of energy. This can allow for a lot of healing to come through. And I do feel like it's healing that's coming through and not fresh wounds. A few of you, there could be some fresh wounds. I don't necessarily know if that's going to be fully the case, considering we're going into a full moon energy. I am again stating that a lot of this is going to be about putting more things into balance. And this is why I'm saying it feels like we're addressing and seeing the wounds, addressing and discussing our trauma and our past. Another reason I'm going into that trauma in the past thing, because we just had that Mercury-Pluto square. And there's some things we feel very much drawn to talk about because all of the rest of this week, Mercury is doing a little dance with the North Node. And we are drawn to certain things, drawn to certain communication. We feel that need inside of us. I need to call this person. I need to write this down. I need to say this thing. I need to get this off my chest. I need to do this thing. I need to go to this place. I need this. We feel it. And a lot of us are being very much triggered into certain conversations in a lot of different ways. So this is one part. The 5th is going to be interesting. The 5th has just as many layers to it as the 30th did, which is why I kept putting those two together. March 30th, by the way. Okay. So we have the Sun Chiron conjunction. A few more hours in, we enter that full moon. Opposite Chiron, the Sun and Chiron's conjunction is still very, very involved. Right close to midnight. So between 11 and midnight my time. If you're East Coast, it's actually going to happen on the 6th. If you're West Coast or anywhere in that direction, it's going to still be on the 5th. We go into the full moon in Libra. This is a full moon in Venus's sign. This is going to be where the South Node will be later this year, literally just a few months away. And this will be where we start to have our next set of eclipse cycles. The ruler of this full moon, again, is Venus. Where is Venus? Well, she's starting a very interesting transit right here that's going to be occurring over the course of the next few days. And that is, Venus is being sextiled by Neptune. Now, when I went back and looked at the Mars-Chiron conjunction that occurred in June, it was right around the full moon in Sag. So I think that was June 14th, 15th, somewhere in that range. I'm trying to do that part from memory. I should have wrote it down. I'm sorry. Everybody's got a calendar and they usually tell you at least when the full moon is, even if you don't follow the full aspects of astrology. Middle of June last year. At that same time, whenever Mars and Chiron were having their conjunction, Venus was entering a sextile from Neptune. So we're definitely opening up more than one similar area in the sky. The difference is going to be, one, this is the sun this time, not Chiron. I'm sorry, not Mars. It's still Chiron. It's still very much Chiron. This is the sun and Chiron. And two, last time Neptune was retrograde. Neptune turned retrograde right after that Sagittarius full moon. Like literally, if you went back and you look at the full moons of last year, it was like the Libra full moon squared Pluto. Pluto went retrograde. The Scorpio full moon squared Saturn, and then Saturn went retrograde. And then the next one was the Sagittarius full moon squaring Neptune, and then Neptune went retrograde. So it was just like, we're hitting a peak and freeze. We don't necessarily have that in this situation. Not so much. Now, this full moon is not necessarily squaring anything, not by degree. By house, yes, because Libra in general is 4 placements away from Cancer. So by house system, this full moon is squaring Mars. And Mars is the host of all of the upcoming eclipses. But part of this energy started when Mars was squaring the moon. And when I was meditating on this, like I could feel the shift. Like part of this week is completely separate from everything that we're working on. It's so much separate. It will all come together. But part of this week is just like, it's the side quest. For you gamers, you'll love that analogy. It's the side quest. But it's a very necessary side quest. And if we do this right, it's a hell of a bounty. Whatever the reward is for killing that dragon or whatever we were doing, we're getting a lot of Sonic rings, okay? I'm not a gamer. I just know enough. Just little bits. Little bits. Now, this is a full moon in a Venus-ruled sign. And the ruler, Venus, is entering a sextile from Neptune. There is an area where we need to have understanding, that we need clarity. And considering Mercury, this planet of communication and logic, is making a conjunction to the North Node, we are feeling drawn to having certain conversations. Some of these are going to be with romantic partners from the past. Some of these are going to be hard conversations with loved ones, letting them know that something is going to be shifting and something is going to be changing. This is telling certain loved ones of the changes that have already occurred. And in a lot of ways, this energy is meant to shift us into balance this week. And I'm not just talking about during the full moon. It's not just in specific to the full moon. It is this week, because you'll see Mercury in the North Node. This goes on for a couple of days. Venus and Neptune, it's going to go on for a few days. So a lot of the energy that is in this full moon is not just going to happen during the full moon. It's going to happen the day of. It's going to happen the days following. In a lot of ways, we're going to see the transition and see the shift. And this shift is meant to be more in balance. Why do I keep saying balance? Because of what Libra represents. It is partnership. It is marriage. It is the judicial system. It is law. It is things being very, very fair. Glittery, that is Libra, but fair. Pink, and a lot of times, but fair. I'm so sorry for my guys right now. Like, Dusty, I don't care about pink. I know you don't. Anyways, now. This will carry into the next day. I'm not hiding that. I've been very clear about that. The energy of this full moon, it plays out into the evening. We will still be dealing with the energy the next day. So I'm going to bump part of this by hour because we're at 11 p.m. at night. That's why. I want to get us to a different part of the sky that's going to be more beneficial to us. Look, noon. It's lunchtime. Anyways, where's the moon? Still in Libra. What does the moon do the next morning after the full moon? So before now, before this 12:26 time, but earlier in the day, the moon is making an opposition to Jupiter. There is hope in what we are rebalancing. There is something that needs to be understood in this rebalancing. What else is going on? Venus is getting closer to her sextile from Neptune. More things are breaking through the fog. More things are being understood. More areas that had been so cloudy and veiled from us are starting to be revealed. Certain things are falling back or being pulled away. And we're feeling this shift both on the external side and the internal side. We're feeling this need to bring something into frame, picture frame, frame, that is connected to this Venusian energy, that is connected to areas that need to play out even beyond the current. Things that will take us into the deeper parts of next year, this area where we're shifting and bringing things together. All right. As the day continues, we're going to still be very much in that balancing act. Mercury is very much making a conjunction to the North Node. And the other thing that is going on around this exact time is Mercury is entering shadow. Mercury enters shadow this week. So some of the things that we are discussing, some of the things that we are finally getting off of our chest, or just some of the things that we're thinking about and we can't necessarily pull the trigger because some of y'all like to drag your feet. I'm just going to roast you on that one. We feel them. Now, not everybody's going to have their conversations right now. Not everybody's going to say it with their chest. Not everybody's going to get things off their chest. They're going to try to ignore the feeling. They're going to try to not restore those balances. What they need to know, what all of us need to know, is that we are coming back to this energy by the middle of May. Whenever Mercury turns retrograde here in a few weeks in the month of April, Mercury will slowly go backwards and revisit this area of the sky. So that can mean a couple of different things. Is whatever is kind of coming out this week, we won't even fully get to understand or pursue or enjoy until Mercury comes back and reframes our thinking. This is, in some ways, a very temporary moment because we're going to get looped back into our work and into everything that we've been dealing with in our milestones. So in some ways, this is like a blip energy letting us know we're coming back to these things. If we do have certain conversations and let people back in from the past, it's very likely that the people from the past that we've had full separation from, they might not come back this week. Whoever is needed, whoever's necessary, whoever's supposed to be a part of everything in our journey that we're talking about, whether that is a romantic partner, whether that's a business partner, whether that is family members, whatever that could be, friends, colleagues, whatever, not everybody will come back right now. Some will. Others will end up coming back at the end of the retrograde. And that's because that's what retrogrades do. They make people reframe their thinking. And usually that means reoccurrences and reconnecting. So just understand, if somebody you think is supposed to be coming back, that you've been waiting for them to come back, they might not come back quite yet. Just understand that the energy has been activated. In a lot of ways, the energy is activating. Okay. Now, I'm going to bump this by day. And we're going to go into the 7th. The moon is going to go into Scorpio, and the moon will immediately square Pluto. So let's pretend the moon is still right here at 0 degrees. It will square Pluto. Then it's going to trine Saturn. It will make this conjunction to the South Node, enter this opposition to Mercury, and simultaneously trine Mars. Scorpio is not the moon's favorite place. He doesn't do well here. He's in his fall. She's in her fall. Sorry, I'm saying he. She's in her fall. But the thing is, in the sign of Cancer, the sign that the moon rules, Mars, he is in his fall. That's where the heat came in. I'm so sorry. By having the moon and Mars in each other's signs, we have mutual reception. Therefore, we have different levels of understanding. Mars doesn't do well in the sign of Cancer, but having mutual reception with the moon bolsters his energy. It reaffirms certain part of his energy. The moon in a single day, while being in the sign of Scorpio, is going to trine one ruler and square another ruler. And I said that backwards. The square is first, then the trine. The modern ruler of Scorpio is Pluto. The traditional ruler is Mars. And the moon will make connections to each of them this day. There will be understandings. There will be an area where we need new information. There is an area where we need to have certain bits of knowledge. And this will also allow for necessary emotional release. Why do I say that? Because the moon, which rules our emotions, which rules our dreams and our intuition and things like that, is making a conjunction to the South Node. Release, peace, letting things go, losing our ego. This is a body without a head. Where's the head? That's the North Node. That's the North Node, and it's making a conjunction to Mercury. Our head is consuming the information. It's consuming the conversation. It's consuming the content. It's doing this deep dive in logical ways to allow for emotional purging. Necessary purging. This leads into other aspects of transformation that aren't necessarily physically tied to the other areas where we've been doing work. We need to process certain traumas. That was a part of the Sun Chiron conjunction. This right here also feeds into releasing and letting things go emotionally. But this is healthy release, healthy purging, healthy understanding. Don't get that very often. This is good energy. It is not going to feel good to a lot of people. There are some people that the minute emotions are involved is also a victim mentality. Get out of it. Get out of it. Be open-minded to the conversations, to the information, to the situations that are going on this day. Because it's not all about one area. And it's not just about this day. It's not. Okay. That is on the 7th. As we go through the rest of the day, the moon is still going to be in Scorpio. We're going to get to the 8th, and we're going to have had so much come through that allows for that healing, that allows for understanding. And in some ways, we're not just sitting in one area. We're not just sitting in one little waiting room having back-to-back-to-back conversations. There's going to be some hit and miss stuff. There's going to be other areas. Technology can be very much involved, but there can be something that gets announced on the 8th. There is something that can be communicated on the 8th. And what I want you guys to understand is that not everybody is going to be as excited about what's going on in your individual world as you are. There will be some resistance. There will be others that are not quite happy about what's going on. They're just like, oh, well, that's so good for you, which is the most backhanded passive-aggressive comment to make. But it's true. Just understand whatever's best for you is yours. If somebody comes to you with really exciting news, try to be supportive. Try to be supportive. Don't do the backhanded stuff. You are going through one thing, another person can be going through another thing, and having awareness of how one transit can play out well for one person and not so well for another person is something that more people should understand and consider before we have certain levels of reaction. So there can be some back and forth. Some people are going to have some questions. Somebody are going to have some concerns. A lot of people are going to be like, we had such a great conversation last night and tonight we're going to go to dinner. And then your friend's going to be like, oh, well, that's so good for you. I don't know what it is about that comment. I hate that comment. Hate is a bad word, I know, but still, it's just, I don't like that comment. But it is true. Now, this is still the 8th. What do we have? We still have Neptune in this sextile to Venus, but they are separating now. What else is going on is that we've still had all of the last few days where Mercury is in this sextile to Mars. Now, Mercury entered shadow. And when Mercury enters shadow, we start to do little bits of slowing down. It's not full slow yet, but understand that there's a reason that the Mercury-Mars sextile has lasted for more than a day. It's because we're in this area, we're going over certain topics that aren't necessarily going to just be one situation, one event, one moment. It feeds into a series of moments. And again, it's going to feed into an area that we're going to end up coming back to later on. Now, later on Saturday, whenever the moon gets deeper into Scorpio, it will make a trine. So that's one part of a triangle, water to water, emotion to emotion, release of emotion to spiritual emotion, because it's Neptune and Pisces. And it's going to hit that opposition to Venus. Understanding, blessings, romanticized, desire, passions, soul level energy can be very much tied that evening. There can be a romanticism to it, feeling really good about what you're doing, how you're doing things. I want to bring up that this is the night before Easter. So a lot of people can start doing like the nostalgia things with loved ones and family members. Like, oh, do you remember that one Easter where we couldn't find all the eggs and come to find out the dog ate all the eggs? I know somebody's got that story. Somebody has to have that story. Nostalgia, back and forth, enjoying the moment, enjoying the energy, enjoying how you can bless other people. That's a lot of this energy. Saturday night's really nice. If we've done all of the things, we're going to do really, really well by Saturday evening. Some of us are going to be going on dates. Some of us are just going to be sitting at home doing that nostalgia stuff with our family and having that exchange with loved ones and that back and forth of like, do you remember? Oh, I remember. Oh, do you want to play that game? We haven't played that since we were kids. Yeah, let's play that game. You know how that goes. You know how the holidays get? Now, there can be dreams, interesting messages through dreams, or confirmation of recent events, just kind of blessing you through dreams as we get through the rest of Saturday, overnight Saturday into Sunday. And then Sunday kind of takes us back, starts us back into that other area. The shift, I said shift. The shift that we just went through was very necessary, and it will tie back into other things. And a lot of people that go through the shift this week will be carrying those things with them as they kind of get back to business, so to speak. This is our own little energetic spring break this week. But we get to Easter Sunday. That's what this is. And I like this for a couple of different reasons, but it also kind of tells me how a transit that's going to happen the next week is going to start to kind of carry out right here. So partway through the day, the moon's going to go into Sagittarius. And literally mid-afternoon, the moon is going to square Saturn. But the moon is in Jupiter's sign. Now I want to talk about Jupiter. Hi, Jupiter. Here you are. And I like the fact that the sun is enclosed very, very evenly right here this day, not specifically this minute, but this day, is in this enclosed energy of Chiron and healing our wounds and healing our trauma and looking at the wellness and looking at the health of certain actions and certain activities and certain moments in time, and is getting very, very close to this planet of hope and abundance and prosperity. If we do certain areas of healing, then it's going to lead to other areas of hope. I like that. The sun in this little enclosed area of feeling both healing and happiness, feeling both understanding the need of certain scars and the remembrance of certain scars, but how that has still led into certain areas of prosperity and abundance and joy. And then the moon is in Jupiter's sign, specifically the sign of joy and abundance and happiness and doing things that lead to prosperity and doing things that lead to certain actions. There is hope. There's hope that we kind of fall into after all the events of this week. We end this week in a whole different level of hope and understanding, considering the moon is going to square Saturn in the other Jupiter sign. The understanding that certain things take time. Certain amounts of time is necessary to heal wounds. Sometimes we have to take a break from certain people and then we end up coming back to them later on. We have to take a step back from certain situations and allow the people that really need to handle it to do their business and not be in other people's business. Sometimes that's the step back. And then afterwards, after that person has had their things squared away and done whatever was necessary for them in that moment, then we start to allow for other areas of hope and joy and happiness to be returned. That's what a lot of this starts to feel like. There's hope in the energy. There's hope in the activities. Considering that we're talking about Easter, that's going to be a good Easter for a lot of people. A lot of people are going to have a lot of fun with the Easter Bunny. Some of us don't necessarily, give a crap about Easter, and they're not necessarily going to be like celebrating it. So it's more going to be like, I'm so glad you guys are having a good time. Nice little pictures. I'm going to go to the Chinese restaurant. It kind of depends on what your individual faith is and everything else. I have an eclectic bunch of people that I go from, Wiccans to Christians to Jewish to agnostic. Like, they don't care about anything. So I try to be very even keel with everybody because, well, y'all say God, I say creator. All of us tend to say universe, but a universe tends to be another way to say like the Holy Spirit. So whatever it is that you connect with, that you believe in, that you get acknowledgement from energetically, there's hope. This is a day that we start to feel hope. Hope moving in, hope being restored in a lot of different ways. That recent adjustment, that recent purge, that recent moment of gaining knowledge and gaining insight and gaining information and gaining inspiration now leads to new steps in our steps forward. We're already taking steps forward. But this week, again, kind of feels like a bit of a blip compared to some of the other things that we've been working on. But all of it will come together later in a lot of different ways, in ways I can't even describe right now because we're only talking about this week. Okay. So I will also be doing a separate video that's going to be just about the Libra full moon. And I will actually break that down based off of the rising signs and kind of go over that information all over again, but all more specific to the individual signs of what people can, where they can expect this more finite areas in their life. I appreciate and love every single one of you. I can't express that enough. I had no expectations. I literally had no expectations. I could have been perfectly acceptable if nobody had ever watched a single episode. Instead, everyone's been very, very helpful and receptive to this adjustment, especially my private clients that have only had private readings. Most of them are really taking to the idea of having this weekly forecast because that means we can also do different things whenever we do our individual readings or our one-on-ones or whatever is necessary for those individuals. So again, I love and appreciate every single one of you. I'm very, very grateful. I do not express that enough, but I'm super grateful. Share this with your friends and your family if you think this is going to give them benefit. If you see the full moon energy playing out and you're like, oh, my girl told me this week's going to be crazy, let me send you the link. If you got people in the health industry, they need to know that this is going to be a hectic week. They need to know because every nurse knows a full moon evening. But if you tell them, it's like, oh, you're going to have more than one evening that feels like a full moon, that's a whole different level of mental preparation that can't even be described. If you've never been in that field, if you've never been in those situations, you can't necessarily understand it. But it is helpful for them, and it's helpful for everybody depending on how they take the information. So again, I am grateful. I have so much love for every single one of you. Hit me up with questions, hit me up with concerns. I will talk to you guys soon, and subscribe.